Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we sift through stacks of research to bring you the insights that, well, really matter right now.
And today, we're tackling something pretty heavy. It's urgent, it affects almost everyone.
We're talking about how childhood itself has fundamentally changed, this idea of the great rewiring.
Yeah, and specifically how an entire generation's mental health just seemed to fall off a cliff.
Great rewiring. When you say great, you don't mean good.
No, definitely not good. Think massive, global, and totally uncontrolled. Our sources frame it as this huge accidental experiment.
An experiment conducted on Gen Z?
Exactly. Kids who grew up, who went through puberty during this explosion of the virtual world, personalized, always in their pocket.
Okay, so let's try to get our heads around this. The sources use this really powerful analogy, this thought experiment.
The Mars one.
Yeah, the Mars one. Imagine some tech billionaire, super visionary, right? Decides to set up the first colony on Mars, and they need pioneers, but they argue, hey, kids will adapt better. Low gravity, weird conditions. Let's send them through puberty there.
Right. The idea being their bodies and brains might fundamentally change, adapt to Mars.
Would any rational parent, knowing the risks, sign their kid up for that?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
It sounds insane when you put it like that. No informed consent possible.
And that's the core argument, isn't it? That without ever signing anything, society basically allowed something just as disruptive, just as profound to happen right here on Earth.
Starting around, what, the early 2010s?
Yeah, that's the timeline. So the Great Rewiring is that sudden shift. Kids hitting puberty, figuring out who they are, not primarily in the real physical world,
Where humans always evolved to develop.
but almost entirely inside this super optimized virtual space on their screens.
And our job today, it feels critical, is to unpack the research on this. How did it happen? What are the core harms?
The four foundational harms, the sources call them.
Right. And maybe most importantly, what collective actions can we actually take to, well, bring childhood back to Earth?
It sounds huge. To really get it, we need that timeline. Turn of the millennium, remember that? Tech optimism was sky high.
Oh, yeah. Early internet, basic cell phones. They felt like tools. Gifts, almost. Like Prometheus bringing fire.
You use them for a task, call someone, look something up. They didn't, take over your life.
But then, somewhere between maybe 2008 and 2012, everything changed. Profoundly.
The tech stopped being just a tool, that Swiss Army knife you pull out when needed, and it became, what? An eyeball monopolizing platform?
That's the phrase. Portable, personalized, always on. And, crucially, psychologically sophisticated, designed to hook us.
Hook kids,
Yeah.
specifically during those really vulnerable developmental years.
Yeah. And the sources, they make this comparison that's pretty unsettling.
So big tobacco and leaded gasoline.
Exactly. Companies maximizing engagement, whether they knew it or not, behaving like those industries did. Denial, obfuscation.
Fighting regulation, even when the evidence of harm, especially to young brains, was mounting.
Think about leaded gasoline. We knew lead was damaging kids' brains, lowering IQs across the board for millions.
Right.
But the industry fought tooth and nail for decades just to keep selling a cheap, harmful product.
So the parallel is tech companies using psychology to keep kids clicking, maximizing attention, maximizing profit.
Effectively rewiring vulnerable young brains.
Yeah.
Even if the harm wasn't fully understood or acknowledged initially, it was all about engagement.
Wow. Okay, that really sets the stage. So let's dive into the evidence. The data that showed this experiment went really wrong.
Okay, so when you're looking at a big social crisis, timing is just, it's everything.
Right. If it was slow, gradual changes, decaying institutions, inequality, you'd expect slow, gradual data shifts.
Exactly. But that's not what we see here. In the 2000s, there wasn't much sign of a huge looming crisis for teenagers. Things were sort of stable-ish.
And then, boom, somewhere between 2010 and 2015, it's like a switch flipped.
A sudden steep plunge in adolescent mental health.
And critically, this wasn't just happening in one country or one region.
That's the key point. It was international, synchronized, across the English-speaking world, Northern Europe.
Affecting Gen Z specifically.
That cohort, yeah. The ones who started hitting puberty right around 2009, 2010, just as smartphones and those visual social media apps were really taking off.
You see it so clearly in the U.S. college data. Millennials, the generation before, they were often described as, optimistic, maybe a bit enthusiastic.
College counseling centers were busy in the 2000s, but it was manageable.
Then Gen Z starts arriving on campus mid-2010s.
And the counseling centers are just overwhelmed, flooded, With students reporting diagnosed anxiety, clinical depression, it was a massive shift.
The whole campus culture changed, didn't it? From that millennial discover mode, looking for opportunities, taking risks.
So this much more anxious Gen Z culture, stuck in what the sources call defend mode.
Constantly scanning for threats, operating from a place of scarcity.
Yeah, a very different vibe. But wait, the skeptics always push back here, right?
Oh, yeah. Isn't this just more awareness? Aren't kids just more willing to talk about it now? Less stigma?
It's a fair question.
Hmm.
But the objective behavioral data, that's the undeniable part.
Because it's not just self-reports changing.
Exactly. While self-reported suffering went up, it tracked perfectly with things we can actually measure. Observable behaviors.
Right.
Huge spikes in non-suicidal self-harm, ER visits for self-harm, and, tragically, suicide rates.
Things that aren't just reported, they're real physical outcomes.
Which makes the adolescent suicide data maybe the strongest, most heartbreaking piece of evidence that this crisis is real and tied to that specific time period.
Especially for girls, right? Young adolescent girls.
Ages 10 to 14 in the U.S., the numbers are just horrifying. Their suicide rate started climbing around 2008, maybe a bit earlier.
But the big surge, the really sharp acceleration,
Kicks in right around 2012.
and from 2010 to 2021, for that young group, 10 to 14-year-old girls, the rate went up how much?
167%.
Wow.
167%. That's not a blip. That's not better reporting. That's a catastrophe.
It forces you to ask, okay, what massive environmental shock hit that specific group, preteen and young teen girls, right around 2012?
That timing is the crucial clue.
Yeah.
It wasn't the arrival of the desktop internet in the 90s that didn't tank teen mental health.
Yeah, I know.
It was the shift to portable, always-on, visually driven social media. Instagram taking off, smartphones becoming ubiquitous.
Yeah.
That hit this vulnerable group hard, right as they were entering puberty, around 2012, 2013.
And knowing that precise timing, that specific demographic, it lets us rule out a lot of the other common explanations, doesn't it?
It really does. People talk about 9/11 anxiety, the 2008 financial crisis, political turmoil, student debt, but the timing doesn't fit. If the 2009 financial crisis was the main driver, millennial teens should have crashed then. But they didn't. They stayed pretty optimistic overall.
Plus, things like a U.S. financial crisis or political polarization, they're more regional or they happen sequentially.
Right. But this mental health plunge was international and synchronized. That points overwhelmingly to one thing changing everywhere at roughly the same time.
The arrival of the smartphone and the social media platforms optimize for it.
It suggests the crisis is fundamentally environmental, driven by this technological shift, not primarily sociological or political causes.
Okay, so if we want to understand why this phone-based childhood was so damaging, we need to understand what a healthy childhood is supposed to look like, evolutionarily speaking.
Great. Why do humans have this incredibly long childhood?
We grow fast as babies, then things really slow down for years before puberty.
That long, slow phase.
Yeah.
It's all about learning. We're cultural creatures. Our survival depends on soaking up massive amounts of complex information.
Social rules, how to use tools, how to negotiate with people.
Exactly. All the stuff you need to thrive in a complex human community.
Yeah.
And the primary way kids learn that isn't formal schooling.
It's play.
It's play. Unstructured, free play. The sources call it the work of childhood. Not just for humans, for all young mammals.
Why is play so important for wiring the brain?
It's the ultimate low-stakes training ground. You try things, you fail, you succeed, you have conflicts, you resolve them. And the consequences aren't catastrophic like they are for adults making mistakes in the real world.
Yeah.
You learn negotiation, limits, emotion regulation, bouncing back.
This connects to that concept. The sources emphasize anti-fragility. Can you break that down? It's not just resilience, right?
Right. Fragile things break under stress. Resilient things just endure stress. But anti-fragile things actually need stress, small shocks, setbacks to get stronger.
Like bones needing microfractures to strengthen, or the immune system needing exposure to germs.
Exactly. And a child's mind, their emotional system, is profoundly anti-fragile. They need those little bumps and bruises.
So needing to be left out of a game sometimes, or having to argue over a toy, or maybe falling down trying to climb something.
Yes. They need to figure out how to handle that stuff themselves without an adult instantly swooping in. They need to learn self-regulation, conflict resolution, how to tolerate small emotional hits in that low-stakes play environment.
But starting in the 80s, accelerating in the 90s, adults started, well, preventing that.
systematically blocking those necessary experiences, driven by this rising tide of safetyism,
Safetyism, elevating physical safety above literally everything else.
even above psychological health or developing autonomy. Parental fear just exploded, often fanned by media focusing on rare but scary events like stranger danger.
Which led to overprotection, the collapse of kids just playing outside unsupervised.
Exactly. And safetyism directly undermines anti-fragility. It stops kids from having the experiences they need to grow strong, keeps them stuck in that defend mode we talked about.
Always scanning for danger, thinking in terms of scarcity.
Instead of discover mode, scanning for opportunities, exploring, growing.
Which creates this bizarre paradox for parents now, doesn't it?
Totally. The advice becomes, you actually need to supervise less in the real world. Let them take small risks, play freely.
But you need to supervise more in the virtual world. By delaying access, coordinating with other parents.
Precisely. Delaying immersion until they're older and more equipped to handle its specific optimized risks.
So once that shift happened around 2010 and the phone went from tool to constant companion, the sources identify 4 big harms, foundational harms.
Right, 4 interconnected harms that became almost universal.
Let's start with the most obvious one. Harm number 1, social deprivation.
Just kids physically not being around each other as much. The numbers are stark.
How stark?
Face-to-face time with friends just plummeted after smartphones took hold. U.S. teens went from spending about 122 minutes a day with friends in 2012 down to just 67 minutes a day by 2019.
Wow, that's almost half. So Gen Z was already kind of socially distanced before the pandemic?
In a very real way, yes.
Yeah.
They were physically isolated much more than previous generations.
And that number, 67 minutes, probably doesn't even capture the full picture. Because even when they are together,
the quality of the interaction is damaged, right? The phone's presence changes everything.
just having it visible on the table.
Yeah.
Or someone pulling theirs out, phubbing.
Yeah, phubbing, phone snubbing. Research shows it makes the other person feel less important, less connected. Real connection needs focus, mutual attention.
Which the phone is basically designed to hijack constantly.
So kids lose out on practicing those subtle social cues, the back and forth of real conversation. It undermines the very learning childhood is for.
Okay, harm number 2, sleep deprivation. This seems like a direct consequence of being always connected.
Absolutely. Sleep quantity, sleep quality. Both declined right alongside smartphone adoption rates, especially after 2013.
More teens getting less than 7 hours, which is way below what they need.
Way below. And it's not just the blue light messing with melatonin, though that's part of it.
Well,
It's the psychological state. The constant alerts, the anticipation of the next notification, the social drama playing out 24/7. It keeps the brain wired, anxious, in that defend mode. Hard to power down.
and there's a specific link to social media use late at night?
Very clear link. High social media use, especially after 9 p.m., strongly predicts sleep problems, which then predicts worse mental health. Sleep is fundamental for emotional regulation, memory, everything the developing brain needs.
Destroyed by glowing screens and endless alerts. Okay, harm 3, attention fragmentation.
We all feel this as adults, right? Phones wreck our concentration.
Definitely.
But for adolescents whose brains are still developing that ability to focus, the damage is way worse, exponential.
Because the phone isn't just distracting, it's designed to be alluring, right? Deadlier for concentration than the old internet.
Every notification is like a tiny slot machine pull, a Las Vegas-style sign trying to lure you away from whatever you were doing. Variable rewards, constant novelty.
And teenagers' frontal cortex, the part for focus, self-control, resisting impulses, isn't fully mature yet.
Not even close. It's the last part to develop, often into the mid-20s. William James said kids belong less to himself than to every object which happens to catch his notice.
So this constant switching, multi-screening, it makes it almost impossible for them to practice sustained attention?
Pretty much. They don't get to build that muscle of deep focus. And that fragmented attention spills over into everything: schoolwork, conversations, life.
Which brings us to the 4th harm, addiction, built on something called the hooked model.
Yeah, this is where the behavioral psychology really comes into play. Apps using principles, sometimes explicitly, laid out by researchers like Haidt in his book, Hooked.
How does that loop work?
It's basically 4 steps. Starts with an external trigger like a notification buzz.
Okay.
That prompts an action. You check the app, which gives you a variable reward, maybe a like, maybe a comment, maybe just new, interesting content. The key is it's unpredictable.
Like a slot machine.
Exactly like a slot machine. And that variable reward makes you want to make an investment post something yourself, reply, scroll more, which sets you up for the next trigger.
Let's pause on that variable reward. Why is the variability so addictive?
Because predictable rewards give you satisfaction. Think getting a regular paycheck.
Yeah.
But unpredictable rewards trigger dopamine.
The wanting chemical, not the liking chemical.
Precisely. Dopamine creates craving, desire, anticipation. It doesn't actually make you feel good or satisfied long term. It just makes you want to check again, pull the lever again, scroll again, hoping for that hit.
And this wasn't accidental. The companies knew this worked.
The internal Facebook documents, the Facebook files that Frances Haugen leaked, they confirmed it.
What did they show?
Presentations acknowledging that teens' brains are driven by emotion, novelty, reward, that their underdeveloped frontal cortex makes them very vulnerable to these addictive designs.
They knew they were exploiting a neurological vulnerability.
It appears so. And the cost is real. Addiction researchers like Anna Lem could talk about withdrawal symptoms when heavy users can't access their devices.
Like what?
Intense anxiety, irritability, feeling low, dysphoria. Basically the same symptoms you see in substance addiction.
Okay, so we established the mental health crisis hit girls harder and earlier, particularly those young adolescent girls around 2012. Why the difference? How did the virtual world target boys and girls differently?
A lot of it seems to come down to these core psychological motivations that differ, on average, between the sexes. Agency versus communion.
Agency and communion. Explain those.
So both sexes seek both, obviously. But research suggests girls often have a stronger drive for communion, connection, belonging, intimacy within a group. Boys tend, on average, to prioritize agency, standing out, having an impact, achieving status, asserting dominance.
And social media, especially the visual platform.
Almost perfectly designed to exploit that need for communion. They offer this shallow, quantified version of connection likes, follower counts, comments.
Instead of the deep, messy, real-world relationships kids actually need.
Exactly. And for girls, this vulnerability gets hit in a few specific ways. First, visual comparisons and perfectionism.
Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, they're all about how things look.
Right. Constant social comparison ramped up to an impossible degree. Filters, influencers, the pressure to present a perfect life, a perfect body.
And this ties into the rise in perfectionism seen around the early 2010s.
Directly correlates. A surge in socially prescribed perfectionism, feeling like you have to be perfect for others across the US, UK, Canada, right when these platforms took off.
Didn't the Facebook files basically admit this? That Instagram was toxic for girls?
They did. Internal research found teens blaming Instagram specifically for increasing their anxiety, body image issues, depression. The company knew.
Okay, what's the second way it hits girls?
It amplifies relational aggression.
The way girls sometimes compete socially. Gossip, exclusion, turning people against each other.
Yeah. Social media takes that and puts it on steroids. Gossip goes viral instantly. Exclusion can feel permanent in public. Cyberbullying is relentless. The social environment becomes incredibly high stakes and terrifying.
Constant anxiety about where you stand.
And third, something really disturbing.
Huh.
The rise of sociogenic illness.
Illness spreading socially. How does that work?
Well, we know anxiety and depression can be somewhat contagious emotionally, especially in tight-knit groups under stress.
Okay.
When you have networks of stressed girls spending hours watching videos, sometimes about mental health struggles or even specific symptoms, it can create conditions for emotional contagion and conformity bias to kick in. Psychiatrists started noticing these sudden outbreaks.
Outbreaks of what?
Things like functional tailpicks, physical movements with no neurological cause spreading rapidly through friend groups or schools. Even reports of increased dissociative identity disorder diagnoses being linked to specific online content, particularly on TikTok.
Wow. So kids see content about symptoms, maybe identify with it due to stress, and then almost unconsciously mimic it, and it spreads.
That seems to be the mechanism. Stress, manifesting physically or psychologically, amplified and transmitted through the network. It's a scary feedback loop.
Okay, let's shift to the boys. Their path was different. Less acute anxiety spike, more decline.
Yeah, it looks like a slow decline in real-world achievement and engagement that started way back, maybe the 70s, but then really accelerated after 2010.
So while girls turned inward with anxiety and depression,
Boys increasingly withdrew from the real world into the virtual world.
why? Was the real world becoming less appealing to them?
Perhaps. Less unsupervised play, less physical risk-taking allowed.
Yeah.
Maybe the real world felt less suited to that drive for agency and achievement.
And the virtual world was right there, offering endless quests, points, status.
Exactly, particularly in gaming communities. But the pull came in two major forms. One, quite problematic.
Which are
First, the explosion of easily accessible hardcore pornography.
available to boys right during puberty, privately, infinitely.
Yeah. And the sources suggest heavy use during that critical developmental window can mess with healthy sexual and romantic development. Unrealistic expectations, maybe making real-life intimacy seem less appealing or more difficult compared to the super stimulus online.
Leading to less satisfaction later on.
That's the concern.
Yeah.
And the second pull is video games.
Now, games aren't all bad, right? Some have benefits.
Definitely cognitive skills, problem solving, even social connection in team games. But it's the heavy immersive use that's the problem.
The opportunity cost.
Massive opportunity cost. We're talking a significant minority, maybe 7% of adolescent boys, meeting criteria for internet gaming disorder.
Meaning it's actually impairing their lives.
Yeah. Skipping meals, bad hygiene, losing sleep, failing school, because the game's achievement loop feels more rewarding or less frustrating than real life.
So it makes it easier to just retreat to the bedroom instead of dealing with homework, finding a job, navigating social stuff.
That seems to be a major factor in the failure to launch phenomenon. Or in extreme cases, like the hikikomori in Japan, young men completely withdrawn from society.
So different paths, but both leading away from real-world engagement. And the end result for both sexes is this sense of what? Meaninglessness.
Yeah, the source is connected to Emil Durkheim's old concept of anomie.
Anomie.
It's a state of normlessness, feeling disconnected, adrift. Like the social rules and structures that used to anchor you are gone, and nothing solid has replaced them.
And you see this in survey data.
Dramatically. Since the early 2010s, both boys and girls show a sharp increase in agreeing with statements like, life often feels meaningless.
It's not just sadness, it's a deeper despair, feeling cut off from real community.
Fragmented, rootless, and maybe overly focused on a fragile self that feels inadequate under the constant scrutiny of the virtual world.
This all feels so huge. If you're a parent listening, it must feel kind of overwhelming. Like, what can I possibly do?
And that feeling is totally understandable because this is a collective action problem. That's a key concept from social science.
Define that for us. What is a collective action problem?
It's basically a situation where everyone acting in their own immediate best interest leads to a terrible outcome for the whole group. A trap.
Give us the smartphone example.
Right. So maybe your kid is 12 and all their friends are getting smartphones. You know it's probably not great. But if you're the only parent who holds back...
Your kid feels left out, isolated, socially penalized.
Exactly. So your rational choice in the short term might be to give them the phone too, just so they fit in.
But when every parent makes that individually rational choice...
The collective result is that childhood gets rewired for everyone, and overall mental health plummets. It's like a prisoner's dilemma for parenting.
So you can't expect individual parents to fix this on their own. They're caught in the trap.
Precisely. Breaking the trap requires coordination. Governments, schools, tech companies maybe, and parents all working together to change the default settings of childhood.
Which leads us to the solutions. The sources propose 4 big ones. Foundational reforms, they call them.
Yeah, 4 big levers that could shift the environment back.
What's number 1 and 2? Yeah. They target the tech itself, right?
Right. 1, no smartphones before high school, probably around age 14.
And 2, no social media before 16.
Yeah, raise the age significantly.
But wait, the current law, COPPA, sets the age at 13 for social media. Why 16? Where did 13 even come from?
That's crucial. 13 wasn't based on any developmental science about brain maturity or addiction risk.
No.
No. It was set back in 1998 as a political compromise about data privacy when companies could collect data from kids online. It had nothing to do with psychological readiness.
So 13 is basically arbitrary from a kid's well-being perspective.
Pretty much. A 13-year-old's brain is still incredibly vulnerable. Raising it to 16 acknowledges the harms we now know about, the addictive designs, the stuff confirmed by the Facebook files. It aligns the age with something closer to psychological maturity, like getting a driver's license.
Okay. Reform number 3 feels like something communities could actually do now. Phone-free schools.
Yes. And this means really phone-free for the entire school day.
Not just put it away during class, because that doesn't really work, does it?
It's almost useless. If kids have them in their pockets or backpacks, they're checking them between classes, at lunch, during recess.
Yeah.
The attention fragmentation, the social deprivation, the addiction loops, they all continue.
So a real ban means phones are secured in lockers or maybe those lockable pouches they use sometimes, from arrival to dismissal.
Exactly. And when schools do that, it tackles 3 of the 4 big harms instantly.
Attention fragmentation goes away during school hours.
Yep. Social deprivation reverses kids actually start talking to each other again at lunch.
And the addiction cycle gets physically interrupted for a big chunk of the day.
Plus, the evidence from places that have done it, like France, shows academic improvements and fewer behavioral problems. It just makes the school environment calmer, more focused, more communal.
Okay, what's the fourth foundational reform? This one's about the real world.
Far more unsupervised play and childhood independence. Basically, we need to actively reverse safetyism.
Easier said than done, right? Parents are scared, sometimes for good reason, but often because the culture tells them to be.
True. But reclaiming that real-world autonomy needs policy changes, too. Governments need to pass reasonable childhood independence laws.
What do those do?
They narrow down those really vague child neglect laws, so parents don't get investigated just for letting their 8-year-old walk to school alone, or their 10-year-old play at the park unsupervised, or an 11-year-old wait briefly in a car.
So it stops criminalizing normal childhood activities that actually build resilience?
Exactly. States like Utah, Colorado, Texas, Virginia, they've started doing this, protecting parents' rights to grant reasonable independence. It sends a cultural signal.
And what can parents do, like, tomorrow?
There are programs like the Let Grow Project. It's simple but powerful, gives kids a homework assignment. Go home and do something new, on your own, that you haven't done before.
Like walk the dog alone, go buy milk, make dinner.
Yeah, age-appropriate stuff.
Yeah.
And the results are amazing. The kid realizes, hey, I can do this. Their confidence shoots up.
And the parent sees it too.
Yes. It breaks that cycle of anxiety. The parent sees their kid is competent, the world isn't quite as terrifying as they thought. It rebuilds trust.
We also need schools to step up with play, right? Playful schools.
More recess, more free play mandated, and maybe rethinking playgrounds. Less sterile plastic, more interesting risk.
Like those adventure playgrounds or junk playgrounds with loose parts, wood, tires, ropes.
Where kids have to figure things out, cooperate, manage actual minor physical risks. Researcher Mariana Brusoni says the goal isn't as safe as possible, it's as safe as necessary.
Because that's slightly risky play where you might get a scrape or have a disagreement.
It has antiphobic effects. It inoculates kids against anxiety by letting them master small challenges, exactly what this anxious generation needs.
Finally, the sources touch on something deeper, the spiritual side. How the phone-based life causes spiritual degradation.
Yeah, but blocking things humans seem to need for deeper meaning. Stillness, solitude, deep reading, connection with nature, community rituals.
And the antidote offered is finding awe in nature.
It's presented as one powerful universal route. The phone world keeps you in what they call the profane mode, constantly focused on the self, your profile, your likes, your anxieties, egocentric. Awe is the opposite. It's that feeling you get when you encounter something vast, amazing, bigger than yourself, a huge landscape, the stars.
Nature is great for that.
It's the easiest, most reliable source for most people. And that feeling of awe, it makes the self feel smaller, less important for a moment. It's self-transcendence.
And that counteracts the anxiety, the meaninglessness.
That's the idea. It shifts you out of that anxious, self-focused loop. It promotes connection, generosity. It reminds you you're part of something much larger than your own screen. A direct antidote to enemy.
Hashtag tech outro.
So wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway? We've covered a lot. I mean, the core message is pretty stark. The great rewiring. This huge experiment of shifting childhood into the virtual world during those critical years. It's been a failure, a catastrophic one, looking at the mental health data.
With these really distinct paths for boys and girls driven by how the platforms exploited their different psychological needs.
Yeah. But the hopeful part is the problem is huge, but the core solutions are understandable. They're foundational.
Those 4 reforms, delaying smartphones and social media, getting phones completely out of schools, and actively pushing for more real-world independence and play.
They address the root causes. And crucially, they require collective action. We have to recognize we're not just facing individual struggles, we're caught in a collective trap.
Okay, so here's the final provocative thought we want to leave you with today. This crisis, it often feels like, smoke slowly filling a room. Everyone kind of smells it, feels uneasy, but maybe waits for someone else to sound the alarm because of that collective action problem, that bystander effect.
Right. No one wants to be the first one to overreact or the only one whose kid doesn't have the phone.
So the call to action is speak up and link up. If you have that nagging feeling, that suspicion that this phone-based childhood isn't right, talk about it.
Talk to other parents, talk to teachers, connect with groups that are already working on this, like Wait Until 8th or Let Grow. Share your concerns, coordinate your actions.
Because childhood evolved here on Earth, kids are designed to thrive in real places with real people facing real, manageable challenges.
It's time to end the accidental experiment. It's time to coordinate and bring childhood back to Earth. Bring our children home.
The future really depends on us as adults, making independence normal again, making connection happen face to face, and making the virtual world less central, especially for young kids.
That's the path back, building that anti-fragility, rebuilding community connection.
An incredibly important deep dive. Thank you for walking us through it.
Thanks for having me. It's crucial stuff.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.